You're listening to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast, hosted by Lisa Rozier, featuring attorney Dave Zampano, along with frequent guests. Whether you're a seasoned estate planning attorney, an attorney looking to add estate planning and elder law to your existing list of practice areas, or you're just starting out, this podcast will give you a solid plan for success. Listen now as Dave and his guests share their personal journeys to practice success and the insights they learned along the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast. I'm Lisa Rozier, and I'm joined with Dave Zampano and special guest Matthew Deliberato from Independence, Ohio, and also an LWP member. Matt, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Man, it's always good to talk to you, brother. You know, this is not an LWP conversation. This is a law practice success conversation. And, if you could just give the listeners, I'm sure we have listeners out there who are where you are in your practice or might be where you have been in the past. So maybe give a high level of your practice, how long you've been doing it, what you've been doing, what you are currently, and
sure,
we can poke and prod along the way. What got you to where you are and where you started?
Good. I grew up in a funeral home, as you know, Dave. And it's a weird way to grow up because people would always say, isn't that bizarre growing up in a funeral home? And I said, isn't it bizarre not growing up in a funeral home? You just don't know the difference. But I was always raised in an environment where you took care of people and they were like your family. In fact, I think my dad suffered a lot with taking care of other people before his own family. And I really learned a lot from that. And so I went
to responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. And so I went to law school after starting at the funeral home after undergrad and said, God, this is what I want to do. And I started doing both, if you remember. And so I'm at the funeral home being a funeral director. I'm working the law practice, and it was challenging. It was challenging because it was two careers, and I ended up getting cancer in 2010. And that's when I realized I can't do both. And I really love doing estate planning. And that's what I've done my entire career. And so I started off in a small, meager little office and found, actually laying in bed having chemo treatments, found Lawyers with Purpose. At the time was, I think, MPS, right? Back in those days, a long time ago.
Well, you've been around a long time.
A long time, yes. And it changed my life. It really did. It really opened up. It took me from that small town mentality to understanding more about the bigger picture about estate planning and what I could do. And I've come a long way.
It's really funny, Matt. I've heard you tell the story 1,000 times, but I heard it differently today. Your father, growing up in the funeral business, you are entrusted to be the caregiver of another person's heart. Mm-hmm. And at the most vulnerable part of their life, the loss of another loved one. And it's funny, isn't that what we kind of do in our practices as estate planning attorneys? You've really kind of brought that forward to the living rather than to the dead, right? Oh,
absolutely. My grandfather always used to say, if you don't treat people like they're your family, don't do it. Just don't do it. And that's
I love that.
How it works.
So let me ask you the question. Describe your practice today, what it looks like, how big, how small, what you do, your team.
Sure. Today we have 5 office staff. I do have an attorney part-time that does our probate and trust administration. We have grown immensely. I went from being a single sole guy to having an assistant to having, actually in the early days, I had another attorney doing probate and trust administration, to going downtown Cleveland where I had a partner, and it was probably the worst 3 years of my life. It was a terrible situation. It was a terrible partnership. It was actually a PI firm that I joined up with, and I'd known the guy all my life. And from there have grown to, like I said, 5 office staff. And we service probably, I would say, I don't have an exact count, but maybe 200 to 300 families a year. And, it's just gone to the next level. It's amazing where I've come from. It's all that gap and gain conversation. And I hate to keep bringing that up, but it is really true to my heart because I am a gap person. I sit in the negative a lot. And so it's very good for me to get into the game.
Yeah, so let's clarify. The Gap and the Gain is an awesome book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Anyone who's been listening to these podcasts knows I'm a longtime Strategic Coach member. And Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, has got a great book series that he created with Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and they are bestsellers, every one of them coming off the shelf. So the gap in the gain is a great conversation. So let's talk about maybe that gap in the gain a little bit, Matt. So how would you describe, again, I know you're not Dan Sullivan, but how would you describe to a listener what that gap in gain is?
So I think the best explanation that I can come up with is, let's say I want to get to 100 and I'm at 80. It's, do you worry about the 20% difference? And that's kind of the gap of where I really want to be, or recognizing that 80% that you come to. And for me, that's really what it means to me. Gap is negative, gain is positive. And so just getting yourself back into the gain of realizing where you've come from to where you're at now today.
Yeah, isn't that true for all of us? You've been around me long enough that in trainings I always raise this issue, but let's do it for the sake of the podcast. Do you all remember there was that conversation we had in our heads? If I can just make X, everything would be okay.
Yeah.
Now we're long past X and we're still saying the same thing. If I could just make Y, everything okay. If I could just make Z. And I think Dan talks about that as utopia, right? We never are going to get to where we want to be, not until you die, right? You're always going to want to be progressing. And I think what Dan says, and just like you said, is as we progress, the important thing is never to measure ourselves where we are from where we want to be, but measure ourselves from where we are to where we started. And I think that's the 80%, really recognize how far we've come along. Mm-hmm. So how has that impacted you in your practice over the years? Because I'm sure there's been difficult times, growing from, you being in a firm that didn't work very well with a friend, and we'll come back to that one in a minute, but to getting to a place where you're managing 5 staff, 5.5 with a part-time attorney. What are some of the challenges of the gap in the gain you faced along the way?
I think it's constant. I had a friend of mine who was a dentist, and he used to have above his office door, it said, "Let the show begin." And for him, it was, turning on and turning off all the negative things and turning on the positive. But certainly it's like the 2x4s we talk about that hit you every day. It happens constantly. We struggled with probably 3 or 4 months this year where our revenue just wasn't there. And, you try to figure out, how does that come to be? How did that happen? And that's tough. It's not an easy thing. I'm be the first to admit it's not fun. It's hard. And it's the gap, right? It's where I want to be at X. I want to be at X. And I keep thinking about X, but I realize where I've come to. And you look at those pictures, we talk about reporting, how important reporting is. And we were looking at reporting today with my law firm leader and I, and, and a whole for the year, we're actually not so bad, so it's really the micro versus the macro. But it's a constant challenge.
Yeah. Getting caught up, like, the negative in any given moment, they're real. They happen. Revenue's down, leads stop coming in. But again, you look at those differently, and you said the reporting tells you things are happening. Then when you start anchoring to that, you get what we call leading indicators, right? Where so many ICFs will equal so much revenue 30 days down the road, 60 days down the road. And you start focusing on filling the pipeline rather than trying to fill the bucket, right?
Correct.
Kind of fill the need of today, you start feeling, okay. And so once you went through that challenging time, since you've come out of it, what's happened in the process since?
So I think most importantly is just by following the process, it has really changed how we think and what we do. So I'll give you my good example is I used to have to beg and plead to do a firm retreat quarterly. And when are we getting this on the calendar? And let's put it on the calendar and then last quarter, it happened automatically. My team said, "Hey, we're doing a team retreat this week." And I said, I don't even know how that was possible because I'm the one driving it. Now I have people driving it. That whole self-led, self-managed mentality seems to be spreading throughout the organization, which is just incredible to me. But there's always bumps in the road, right? There's always challenges. And I think it's just a matter of dealing with the challenge and then getting into the gain, right? Getting out of the gap and into the gain. What I think one of the things that Dan Sullivan said was, don't spend more than 5 minutes in the gap. Recognize it, appreciate it, take care of that emotion, that negativity, but get out of it and make that a conscious effort. And I think that's what I've been trying to do lately.
Yeah. And, I'm reading between the lines, but it seems like when you get into the gap, you then go and you said, start to look at the reporting. So I'm going to expand that a little.
Yeah.
Reporting or tools, like what are some of the reports or tools you rely on to help you always kind of make progress, right? Take that 70%, get it to 80 to 90, and then create a new goal. What are some of the tools and things that you've come to rely on in reporting?
Well, the start is just our dashboard. Our dashboard is key to success. It goes everything from if you're unfamiliar with it out there, initial contacts to, our hire rates, our enrollment rate, our prospects, our conversion rates, you name it. It's on that sheet, and it's one sheet that, I get a day before the team meeting, and I get to review it. So I have some knowledge up front to ask the important questions of, well, why is it that we had only 50 initial contacts this month? Why is it that, our conversion rate to workshop was down from, 60% to 30% or whatever the numbers are. I'm not just making them up. That would probably be the key tool for me. And then it's all the financials. The financials really speak to me. I used to be the guy who was like everyone else, money in the checkbook. If there was money there, you spent, and if there wasn't, you didn't. And that's how I ran my business. And now I don't do that. And so it has changed in the financial reporting, the dashboard. And then I think above all is planning. And I've been trying to institute planning to my team. And when I say planning, we're doing the weekly focuser, the monthly focuser, the quarterly focuser, right? We're doing all these things that I've told you a number of times, Dave, how hard it is for me to do it, right? I feel like it's such a burden. And then you told me this is a gift for you. And I thought, oh yeah, that's true. This is a gift for me. So now it's just time that I spend with myself, that I'm able to put down all my personal and professional things. And that's what I like most about those tools, is that it's not just about professional, it's about personal too. And so my gains in my personal life have just been phenomenal because I've actually been writing them out. It's that pen to paper, right? That makes it happen. It's
so funny, Matt, listening to you. So my gosh, what you just said in probably a minute had like 27 lessons in it. The first one was financial. So we have a concept that, we call financial discipline. And you come to mind because I remember the challenge it was getting you to comply to the financial standards of measurement, right? Because so many people, they're getting their P&Ls. In other words, did they make money? They're getting it a month after the month. So if we just finished November, there are people that didn't know their November numbers till almost December was over. Well, how does that help you, right? So going forward now, your November numbers every week in November. You know what they are and you know what they're going to be from that dashboard, right? So I'm filling in some of the blanks. Yep. And that's a different way of living. And I remember now I look at your P&Ls monthly. I'm like, holy mackerel, concise, clear, budget to actual. Now that wasn't easy, was it? And did you fix that? I mean, this is the biggest challenge we find is lawyers think they have to do everything, right? So how did you get from that place of fighting to now that you have budget to actuals and really clear reporting? I found a who. And again, that's another Dan Sullivan concept. I know I'm like pro Dan Sullivan today, but I'm pro Dan Sullivan. I've been coaching with Dan for almost 20 years. And so who, not how, right? So we found a who. I found Karen. And so Karen has been really taking the lead on this. And it's amazing to know that, I mean, she's apologizing to me saying, I have the P&L. I swear it's going to be at 2:00 today. And sure enough, at 2:00, it shows up. And I keep telling her, no apologies needed. I know you're working on it. I know I get it. If I don't get it, then it's a problem, but I get it. Right. So I get those consistently. There's no gap in it. And it's just amazing how when you let go of something, right, that really it's being done. It's being done on a consistent basis. Well, I would twist that a little bit, right? When you let go of the things that you're not good at, right? Because we all think because, well, I'm the owner, I got to do all this stuff. And the Who Not How book by Dan Sullivan, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, great book, recommended highly. But, we walk about the who's, right? So think about another concept of strategic coaches, unique ability. My dad had that concept from when I was growing up. He didn't call it unique ability. He called it your God-given talents. He'd say, God gave you talents, use them, right? So in this world, every one of us has a God-given talent or unique ability. Call it what you will. And the key is that we focus on the things we do really well. And I think we as lawyers, I know I did for a very long time in the beginning, was felt guilty giving things to other people that we didn't like doing. But what I learned afterward was they actually like it. I mean, they actually get excited about that and like, hey, I got your reports. Look, and it's like, oh, really? You like this? Yeah, this is awesome. And like, cool, right? And then it gives you permission to do the things that you're really good at, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And I was raised that way. Like at the funeral home, I was in charge of payroll and accounting, and I did all that. And it was not my unique ability. I hated it, but I did it. And so for me, it was so hard to say, this is something I shouldn't be doing, because I felt like it was something I should be doing.
Yeah, you thought it was your responsibility.
And it was completely not my responsibility.
So let me ask you this question. So you're along the way, you've got 5 staff now supporting you. What is your unique ability? What are you doing in the firm? What's your highest and best use in the firm?
So everybody tells me that my unique ability are really enrolling clients and doing the workshops. And that's where I probably excel, is with my personal relationships with people. But I think that that's something that after 22 years of practice, I feel like it's getting routine for me. So it's a constant struggle of how do I change what I'm doing and how I do it so it's not routine. And that's good, because I build relationships with people. And like we talked about, that's family. It's my family. You're part of our family when you become part of the Deliberato Law Center. So it's good. That's my unique ability, is people. And that's where I stick to. I stay with people.
So you're carrying on the tradition your father and grandfather said, which is, treat these people and I love that. So I guess we're kind of winding down here. As you think about it, your journey, and you think about who might be listening.
Yep.
What's your message of encouragement or warning or any other thought that comes to mind as you think about your whole the flash of you getting from when you started to where you are? If you can give a piece of sage advice.
Oh my,
what would that be?
I'm the worst at this, but I would say probably is stay the course. There is, whatever you think is probably drawing you or pulling you down in a negative, it probably is. Realize your situation and knowing it can change. Nothing's constant. You can change where you're headed. And my direction has changed a number of times during my career, and for the better. And it took me on one employee 11 years to realize she was just a cancer and a drain on the firm. And I wish it wouldn't have taken 11 years, but that's an experience I have now. And it's something that I think hard.
Yeah, probably going forward, it doesn't take you 11 minutes anymore.
No.
The first time it was hard. I went through that too. Dave coached me.
Yeah, everybody, right?
Too. Everybody goes through it.
You know what we call that?
And if you go through it, it's like, oh, I should have done that a lot sooner.
Well, we call that a toleration, right? We call that a toleration. You're tolerating something. And that comes down from lack of expectations and accountability, right?
That's right.
And
which I knew nothing about.
I
knew nothing about.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about expectations and tolerations. And this is all things I've learned through LWP and you. So thank you.
In the coaching.
Well, yeah. So, and I think these, again, while we're the teacher, I think these are core concepts that anyone could take to them. Is if you're constantly have a pain, if there's a gnawing in your stomach every time you deal with a person, pay attention to that. It's real.
Yep.
And that might be what we call a toleration. And then we find what a toleration is. It's usually from a lack of an expectation or accountability. So you're tolerating something that you're feeling like someone's just not doing what they're supposed to. Well, are you clear? Are they clear on what they're supposed to be doing, and are they doing it? And then we have the conversation, which is an EOS conversation, is then you just coach people up. So you coach them out of that place where they are, or you coach them out. You help them see this probably isn't the place for you. We love you, but to be here, you need to coach up out of this. If you're not willing to coach up, then what do you want in life? Because this is what we're doing here. How can we help you get what you want? So you coach up or coach out, and you really minimize that toleration. Again, comes to a concept, but what I think really comes back to, Matt, and I want to highlight, it comes back to the greatest gift you can give yourself is what?
Planning.
Your planning time, right? Because that's when you get to decide. You said something and you took it for granted. I think what you said is not everything's permanent. You can change anything you said. Well, where does that all start? With you gifting yourself that opportunity to say, what do I want to change? what's not working for me and how can I get it to a place where it's not a drain, but it's something moving me forward. And I think that comes from that time, that reflective time that we need to have to say, my favorite words, what do I want?
Absolutely.
What do I want? And just declaring what you want and saying, all right, well, okay, if that's what I want, what's my role in getting it? And what are other people's role in getting it? And how can I enroll other people in getting it? And in the end, you end up having 5 staff and a firm that's operating. And just out of curiosity, we're toward the end of the year, 2022 goals, anything exciting around that you've set?
You know, it's interesting because my team has come up with most of our goals, and most of it revolves around increasing revenue through RMS, through ICFs, through, different things. But I'd quickly add to that is that for everyone out there, your time may be hard. It may be hard to do the planning, but stick to it, keep doing it, and don't stop because it pays off in the end. 100%.
Yeah, I think the trick is, I think you had that twist when you learned it was for you. It wasn't an obligation. It was something to give you the freedom to dream and think what you want. And exactly. I think people look at it, so I don't do that. My mind doesn't work that way. Well, that's the way your mind does work, actually.
Right.
When you create a vision and declare it first, then you start, the world conspires, right? Once you declare it, the world conspires to help you achieve it. But it was like I was on a call recently with someone. I said, well, what do you want? And they said, I really don't know. Well, then are you wondering why you're spinning your wheels? Because you haven't taken the time to reflect and figure out what you really want. Correct. Once we get clear on what we really want, it tends to happen. Is that a fair statement, Matt?
Absolutely. 100%.
In your experience?
Yes.
Well, I so appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience. Independence, Ohio, you have become independent. There's no question about that. And continuing to build that team. And Lisa, I turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, great conversation as always, gentlemen. Thank you. And Matt, thanks for coming in and joining us. And my takeaway today is planning, the importance of it. And Matt, what a great story. That's one thing I love about all of these different podcasts is just everyone's journey is different and it's so impactful. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And for those who are listening, this is the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success podcast, and you can find additional episodes at lawyerswithpurpose.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practice Success Podcast. Visit www.lawyerswithpurpose.com/podcast to listen to other episodes and to subscribe. We'll see you next time.